Welcome to another episode of Explained by AI. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a really cool science experiment you can try at home. The milk and soap experiment. It's super simple, but it creates this beautiful swirling of colors. It's like a miniature explosion of color right there on your kitchen table.
And you know what the best part is? You probably already have everything you need in your kitchen. Just milk, dish soap, and some food coloring.
Really simple stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of cool science going on behind it.
Yeah.
We think of milk as this plain liquid, but it's actually more complex than that. It's what's called an emulsion.
So an emulsion is like when you have two liquids that don't normally mix, like oil and water, but they're all mixed up together. And milk is mostly water, but it also has these tiny droplets of fat in it.
Oh, so that's why it's an emulsion.
Exactly. And those fat droplets are actually super important for this experiment because they're what the soap is going to interact with later.
Okay, so we have the milk with the fat droplets. What happens next?
So imagine the surface of the milk, like a stretched out elastic sheet. That's the surface tension. It's what keeps the colors from just spreading out right away.
So the surface tension is like holding everything in place for now.
Right.
Okay, then we add the dish soap.
Yeah.
And that's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah, the dish soap is like our disruptor. It comes in and shakes things up.
How does it do that?
Well, soap molecules are kind of cool. They have one end that loves water and one end that hates water.
Oh, so it's like it has two different personalities.
Exactly. And the end that hates water, it really wants to find something else to attach to. So when you put the soap in the milk, those water-hating ends, they go on a hunt for the fat molecules.
It's like a tiny microscopic treasure hunt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when they find the fat molecules, they grab on tight.
And that's what causes all the movement and the colors to swirl around.
You got it. When the soap molecules attach to the fat, they disrupt that surface tension we talked about. And that's what sets everything in motion.
That's so cool. So it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah, you could say that.
The soap disrupts the surface tension. The fat molecules start moving around. And the colors get carried along for the ride.
That's a great way to put it.
So for the best color explosion,
You want to use full fat milk?
because it has more fat molecules.
Because fat means more action.
Or action, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to make it even cooler, you can use those fluorescent dyes instead of regular food coloring.
Yeah. Those look amazing under a blacklight.
All right, so let's walk through how to actually do this experiment.
Okay, so first, you need a shallow dish, like a pie plate or something like that.
Okay, and then we add the milk.
Right. Pour a thin layer of milk into the dish.
Then we add the colors.
Yep. Just a few drops of food coloring or those fluorescent dyes. Spread them out a bit.
So what's next?
Okay, this is the fun part. You need a cotton swab. Dip it in the dish soap.
Okay, got
And then you're going to gently touch the surface of the milk right in the center of one of the color drops.
it. And then
Just watch and be amazed.
it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
It's such a simple experiment, but it's packed with so much science.
Yeah, it really shows you how these everyday things,
Yeah.
like milk and soap, they have all these hidden properties and interactions.
It's like a little window into the microscopic world.
Exactly.
And it's a reminder that science is all around us.
Even in our kitchens.
So what are you waiting for? Go try it.
You know, one thing I was thinking about, we keep talking about full fat milk. What if we tried using skim milk?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Would it still work?
Well, I think it would probably still do something, but it might not be as dramatic. Remember how we talked about the fat molecules being important?
Right, because that's what the soap is grabbing onto.
Exactly. So if you use skim milk, which has way less fat, there are fewer of those targets for the soap molecules.
So it would be like a less intense explosion.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like turning down the volume on the whole thing.
I like that analogy.
Ah.
And it makes you realize how important each ingredient is.
Oh, totally. Everything plays a role.
Okay, so we talked about changing the milk. What about the dish soap? Does it matter what kind you use?
That's a really good question. Because not all dish soaps are made the same.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have different amounts of something called surfactants.
Surfactants?
Those are the things that actually break down the fat molecules.
Oh, okay, so more surfactants means more action.
You got it. So
Yeah.
if you used a dish soap that had a lot of surfactants,
Yeah.
you might see a much quicker reaction.
Interesting. So it's kind of like an experiment within an experiment.
Yeah, you could try out different dish soaps and see what happens.
And see which one creates the coolest patterns.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the milk and the soap. Is there anything else we could change?
Let me think. Oh, how about the temperature of the milk?
Yeah, that's a good one. What difference would that make?
Well, think about it. When milk is cold, it's thicker. And the fat molecules, might not move around as easily.
So it would be harder for the soap to do its thing.
Right. It might take longer for the reaction to happen.
Or maybe it wouldn't be as explosive.
Yeah, that's possible.
What if we heated the milk up?
Then the opposite might happen. The fat molecules would have more energy and move around faster.
So the soap molecules would have an easier time finding them.
And you might get a faster, more intense reaction.
Wow, so many things to try.
I know, right? It's amazing how much science is packed into this one little experiment.
And it's not just about the pretty colors.
No, it's about understanding how things work on a microscopic level.
And it's a great example of how science can be applied to real-life problems.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, remember how we talked about bioremediation?
Bioremediation.
Yeah, it's a way of using microorganisms to clean up pollution.
Oh, right. I remember.
Well, it's kind of like the dish soap in the milk.
How so?
They're both breaking down stuff.
Oh, I see. The dish soap breaks down the fat in the milk, and the microorganisms break down pollutants in the environment.
Exactly. So it's the same principle, just on a different scale.
That's pretty cool. The milk and soap experiment is a model for a real-world solution.
You got it.
Okay, so we've talked about changing the milk, the soap, and the temperature. What if we wanted to get even more creative?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
What if we added other stuff to the milk?
Like what?
I don't know, maybe a drop of oil.
Ooh, that's a good one. Because oil and water don't mix, right?
Right. So it would create another layer in the milk.
And the soap molecules would have to navigate around both the fat and the oil.
That's a good point.
It would definitely make things more complicated.
And maybe even more interesting.
Yeah, you might see some really wild patterns.
Okay, what about something thicker like honey or syrup?
That's a great idea because they have a different viscosity than milk.
Viscosity.
It means how thick or runny something is.
Oh, okay. So honey and syrup are more viscous than milk.
Exactly. So that would definitely change how the soap and fat and colors move around.
Wow, the possibilities are endless.
I know, right? You could spend hours experimenting with different combinations.
And that's what makes science so fun.
It's all about exploring and discovering new things.
And this experiment is a perfect example of that.
It's simple, but it's so full of potential.
And it really shows you that science isn't just about memorizing facts.
It's about asking questions and trying things out.
And who knows, maybe one of these experiments will lead to a major breakthrough.
That would be amazing.
But even if it doesn't, it's still a lot of fun to play around with.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to learn about the world around us.
And it reminds us that science is everywhere.
Even in our kitchens.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, I want to step back for a minute.
Okay.
And think about the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
Well, this milk and soap experiment, it's not just about the colors and patterns.
It's about the process of scientific discovery.
Exactly. It starts with observation, like noticing how the colors move when you add the soap.
Then you start asking questions like, why does that happen?
And then you come up with ideas to test.
Like, what happens if I change the type of milk?
And then you do the experiment and see what happens.
And you learn from the results.
So it's a cycle of observing, questioning, experimenting, and learning.
And that's what science is all about.
It's not just a bunch of facts in a textbook.
It's a way of thinking.
A way of understanding the world around us.
Exactly.
So I encourage everyone to embrace their inner scientist.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
You never know what you might discover.
We've had a lot of fun today exploring the milk and soap experiment.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's just so simple, but it can teach you so much about science.
We talked about how it works, the whole surface tension thing and the fat molecule.
And how those soap molecules are like little torpedoes going after the fat.
Right. And we talked about all the different ways you can experiment with.
Different types of milk, different soaps, different temperatures.
It's really cool how much you can learn just by playing around with some basic kitchen ingredients.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that science isn't just something you read about in books. It's something you can do. And it can be a lot of fun.
So if you haven't tried the milk and soap experiment yet, what are you waiting for?
Go get some milk, some dish soap, and some food coloring.
And let the science begin.
And if you have any questions, or you want to share your cool results, just leave a comment below.
And if you have any other topics you'd like us to explain, let us know that too. We're always looking for new ideas.
So until next time, keep exploring and keep asking questions.
Because that's what science is all about. Do you have any topic that you would like to have explained? Drop it in the comments.